The jungle screamed as plasma bolts tore through ancient trees. Commander Zexai watched through his tactical visor as his elite Vorthack soldiers advanced through the thick green maze of what the humans called the Amazon. Smoke rose from countless burning patches where their energy weapons had carved paths of destruction through the dense foliage. Sector 7 cleared, came the report through his comm unit. No human resistance detected. Zexai's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. For 3 cycles, the Galactic Military Consortium had struggled to understand how humans had managed to repel their previous invasion attempts. The answer seemed obvious now. Their cities fell easily enough, but these primitive jungle dwellers had somehow evaded detection. Not anymore. The Vorthack commander stood 7 feet tall, his chitinous armor gleaming purple-black in the filtered sunlight. His species had conquered 47 worlds, each victory swift and decisive. Humans would be no different, despite their surprising initial resistance. Sir, Lieutenant Krall approached, his plasma rifle still smoking from recent use. The indigenous creatures are fleeing deeper into the jungle. Our thermal scanners show massive movement patterns heading toward the central regions. Good, Zexai replied, studying the holographic map projected from his wrist device. Let them run. Fear will make them easier to track. He had read the intelligence reports. Humans were supposedly clever for a primitive species, but they were soft, weak, and technologically inferior. Their planet's military forces had crumbled within days of the initial assault. The jungle around them stretched endlessly in all directions. Trees rose like organic towers, their canopies so thick that only scattered beams of light penetrated to the forest floor. Strange calls and cries echoed from the shadows as alien creatures fled the Vorthack advance. Deploy incendiary charges along grid pattern 7 Alpha, Zexai ordered. Burn everything in a 3-kilometer radius. Force them into the open. The soldiers moved with practiced efficiency. Within minutes, explosions bloomed across the jungle like deadly flowers. Fire spread rapidly through the dry underbrush, sending columns of black smoke into the sky. Animals screamed and fled as their ancient homes became an inferno. Contact! The shout came from the advanced scout team. Human signatures detected at coordinates 479. Zexai's eyes gleamed. Finally, all units converge on that position. I want prisoners for interrogation. The Vorthack soldiers thundered through the burning jungle, their heavy boots crushing vegetation and small creatures alike. Their armor's environmental systems filtered out the choking smoke while their weapons charged with deadly energy. But when they reached the coordinates, they found only empty clearings and smoldering vegetation. No humans, no signs of recent habitation, just more endless jungle. False readings, sir, reported the scout, checking his scanner with confusion. Thermal signatures show nothing now. Zexai's mandibles clicked in annoyance. Perhaps these humans were more cunning than the report suggested. No matter. He had brought 500 of the consortium's finest soldiers. Whatever primitive tricks these creatures employed would not save them. Expand the search pattern, he commanded. Burn everything. Leave nothing standing. They cannot hide forever. As his forces spread out across the jungle, setting fire to vast sections of the rainforest, Zexai noticed something strange. Despite the destruction they were causing, despite the massive fires and the obvious signs of their presence, the jungle seemed oddly quiet. Not the silence of fear, but something else. Something that made his warrior instincts twitch with unease. In the distance, a bird called, a haunting sound that seemed almost like laughter. Zexai shook his head, dismissing the thought. He was a veteran of countless campaigns. Primitive worlds and their superstitious nonsense held no power over him. But as the day wore on and the fires burned higher, that strange feeling persisted. They were being watched. He was certain of it. Yet every scan came back negative. Every thermal reading showed only their own forces and fleeing animals. Sir, came another report. 3rd Platoon reports equipment malfunctions. Their scanners are picking up ghost readings. Recalibrate and continue, Zexai snapped. But, privately, he wondered what kind of technology these humans might possess to interfere with consortium military equipment. As night began to fall, the fires they had set created an eerie orange glow throughout the jungle. The smoke hung thick in the air, making visibility poor even with their advanced optics. Zexhai ordered his forces to establish a defensive perimeter while they waited for morning. That was when the first soldier disappeared. Private Vec was on perimeter patrol when his comm signal simply vanished. One moment he was reporting normal status, the next his life signs flatlined on the command console. Team Alpha, investigate Private Vec's last known position, Zexhai ordered, checking his tactical display with growing concern. The search team found Vec's armor scattered among the trees, torn apart with precision that spoke of advanced weaponry. But there was no body, no blood, and no signs of the attacker. Just empty armor and the oppressive silence of the jungle night. What could do this to Vorthack battle armor? Lieutenant Krall asked, examining the twisted metal fragments. Before Zexhai could answer, another alarm sounded. Then another. 3 more soldiers had vanished from different sections of the perimeter, their armor found in similar condition. The jungle was no longer quiet. Now it seemed to pulse with malevolent life, as if the very trees were watching, waiting, planning. And somewhere in that green darkness, something hunted the hunters with deadly efficiency. Zexhai realized with growing dread that they were no longer the predators in this ancient jungle. They had become the prey. Dawn broke over the burning jungle with the sound of screaming metal. Zexhai jerked awake in his command post to find his force reduced by half overnight. 23 soldiers had vanished without a trace, their armor scattered throughout the forest like deadly confetti. "Sir, we need to retreat," Lieutenant Krall said, his voice tight with fear. "Whatever's out there, it's picking us off one by one." But Zexhai's pride burned hotter than the jungle fires. No Vorthack force has ever retreated from primitives. Deploy the heavy weapons. If there's something hunting us, we'll hunt it back. The surviving soldiers formed tight defensive formations as they moved deeper into the rainforest. Their plasma cannons hummed with deadly energy, while overhead drones swept the canopy with thermal scanners. Nothing. Always nothing on the scanners. Sergeant Core was the first to see their enemy. "Movement at 3 o'clock, he shouted, raising his rifle toward a massive tree trunk. "I saw something." His words were cut short as something dropped from the canopy above. Not falling, descending with perfect control and deadly purpose. The figure that landed behind Core was unlike anything in their intelligence files. It stood barely 6 feet tall, covered in mud and vegetation that made it nearly invisible. But this wasn't the primitive savage they'd expected. This was something far more dangerous. The figure moved with fluid precision, every motion calculated and efficient. In its hands were weapons that looked primitive but radiated lethal intent. The creature's face was painted in dark patterns that seemed to shift and change in the dappled jungle light. But it was the eyes that made Zexhai's blood run cold. Intelligence burned there. Not animal cunning, but tactical brilliance honed by years of warfare. Fire! Fire everything! Zexhai screamed. Plasma bolts filled the air where the figure had been standing, but it was already gone. Moving through the trees like a ghost, it struck again and again. Each attack was surgical precise. One moment a Vorthack soldier was there, the next he was gone, his equipment scattered and his position empty. "It's just one," Krall shouted over the sound of weapons fire. "How can one creature do this?" But as the day wore on, Zexhai began to understand. This wasn't just any human. This was what the intelligence reports had called a special forces operator, though their briefings had drastically underestimated what that meant. The figure used the jungle itself as a weapon. Vines became snares that sent soldiers tumbling into hidden pits. Tree branches broke at precisely the right moment to crush armor and bone. Water sources were contaminated with substances that caused violent illness within minutes. Most terrifying of all was the psychological warfare. The creature would appear for just seconds, long enough for a soldier to see death approaching, then vanish again. It left signs of its presence everywhere, footprints that led nowhere, equipment arranged in threatening patterns, sounds that echoed from all directions at once. "It's toying with us," one of the soldiers whispered during a brief rest, "like a predator playing with its food." Zexhai wanted to deny it, but he couldn't. Every tactical analysis confirmed what his warriors feared. They were being hunted by something that knew this terrain better than they knew their own ships. Something that had turned the jungle into a vast killing field where every shadow might hide death. By midday, only 15 soldiers remained. Their heavy weapons were useless against an enemy that refused to stand and fight. Their advanced technology meant nothing against an opponent who seemed to anticipate their every move. "Sir," Kral's voice was barely audible. "Our communications are being jammed. We can't contact the fleet." Of course, the creature wasn't just hunting them. It was isolating them, cutting them off from reinforcements and escape routes with the skill of a master strategist. The attacks became more frequent as the afternoon progressed. Not random strikes now, but a carefully orchestrated campaign designed to break their morale and scatter their formation. The figure would appear long enough to eliminate a soldier, then fade back into the green maze before anyone could react. Zexhai found himself questioning everything he thought he knew about human capabilities. How could a species they dismissed as primitive produce warriors of this caliber? How had their intelligence networks missed the existence of such threats? As evening approached, he realized they were being herded. Every attack, every appearance, every psychological pressure was driving them toward a specific location. The creature wasn't just hunting them randomly. It was guiding them like livestock toward some predetermined killing ground. "We're walking into a trap," he told his remaining forces. But what choice did they have? Behind them lay miles of burning jungle and the scattered remains of their comrades. Ahead was unknown danger, but at least a possibility of escape. The forest around them grew denser as they moved, the canopy so thick that twilight seemed to come early. Strange sounds echoed from the shadows. Not animal calls this time, but something else. Something that sounded almost like human speech, though distorted and incomprehensible. "What is that?" a soldier asked, his weapon tracking nervously across the darkening trees. Before anyone could answer, the sounds multiplied. Voices calling from every direction, sometimes seeming close, sometimes distant. A chorus of whispers in an alien language that raised the hair on the back of Zexhai's neck. Then he understood. It wasn't multiple voices. It was one voice, projected and echoed through the jungle with such skill that it seemed to come from everywhere at once. The creature was speaking to them, though none of them could understand the words. But the meaning was clear enough. "You are mine now. You are my domain, and you'll not leave." As full darkness fell, Zexhai realized his force was completely lost, not just geographically, but tactically and psychologically. They had become exactly what this human warrior wanted them to become: frightened, isolated prey, stumbling through an alien landscape toward inevitable doom. The worst part was knowing that their enemy was still out there, watching, waiting, choosing the moment and manner of their destruction with the patience of a true apex predator. The night brought terror beyond anything in Zexhai's military experience. His remaining soldiers huddled in a defensive circle, their weapons pointed outward at shadows that might contain death. But the human warrior didn't attack. Instead, it began a campaign of psychological destruction that slowly shattered their sanity. First came the sounds. Footsteps circling their perimeter, always just outside the range of their lights. The creature moved with such skill that sensors detected nothing, but every soldier could hear it pacing around them like a predator examining trapped prey. Then, the voices started again. Not just one now, but what sounded like entire conversations held in whispers just beyond hearing. The soldiers strained to understand, their trained minds trying to extract tactical information from the incomprehensible sounds. "It's driving us insane," whispered Private Jalik, his rifle shaking in his hands. "Why doesn't it just attack?" Zexhai was beginning to understand the terrible sophistication of their enemy. This human wasn't just killing them, it was breaking them. Every moment of fear, every hour of uncertainty, every whispered sound in the darkness served a purpose. By morning, whatever soldiers remained would be psychological wrecks, incapable of effective resistance. Around midnight, the creature began leaving gifts. The first was discovered by Lieutenant Kral during a perimeter check. A Vorthack helmet, placed carefully on a fallen log just outside their defensive position. Inside was a recording device, standard consortium equipment that had belonged to one of their vanished comrades. "Should we play it?" Kral asked, his voice tight with dread. Against his better judgment, Zexhai activated the device. The recording showed the last moments of Sergeant Thex, one of their most experienced warriors. But the footage revealed something impossible. Fex hadn't been killed by primitive weapons or crude traps. He had been outfought in single combat by the human, who moved with speed and precision that defied everything they knew about the species. The recording showed the human disarming Fex with moves that seemed to flow like water, then taking him down with techniques that spoke of years of training and countless battles. This wasn't a lucky primitive. This was a master warrior who happened to be human. More gifts appeared throughout the night. Pieces of armor arranged in patterns that told stories of how each soldier had died. Weapons reconfigured into shapes that served no purpose except psychological intimidation. Personal items from the dead, arranged in ways that suggested intimate knowledge of Vorthak cultural taboos. "How does it know so much about us?" a soldier asked, staring at a religious symbol from his home world that had been carved into a tree trunk with impossible precision. The answer was becoming clear to Zexhai. This human had fought Vorthak forces before, had studied them, learned their weaknesses, prepared specifically to hunt his kind. This entire encounter wasn't random. It was a carefully planned execution designed to send a message to the Galactic Military Consortium. As dawn approached, only 8 soldiers remained. The others hadn't been killed. They had simply vanished during the night, taken silently while their comrades stood guard mere feet away. The human moved through their defenses like they didn't exist, selecting targets with surgical precision. With morning light came a new horror. The creature finally revealed itself fully, standing in a clearing just beyond their perimeter. In daylight, without the concealing shadows and mud, Zexhai could see exactly what they were facing. The human was smaller than any Vorthak warrior, but moved with economy of motion that spoke of absolute mastery. Its equipment was primitive by consortium standards, but perfectly adapted to the environment. Everything about this warrior, from its camouflage clothing to its silent movement, had been refined through countless battles into something approaching perfection. But it was the scars that told the real story. This human bore marks from plasma weapons, claw wounds from dozens of different alien species, and burn patterns that could only have come from energy blasts. This creature had been fighting the consortium for years, learning, adapting, becoming something humanity's enemies had never expected. "You have been studying us," Zexhai called out, his translator rendering his words into what he hoped was understandable human speech. The warrior nodded slowly, then spoke in accented but clear galactic standard. "Just as you studied us. But your intelligence was incomplete." The voice was calm, conversational, as if they were discussing the weather rather than a hunt that had decimated an elite military force. That casual confidence was more terrifying than any threat could have been. "What are you?" Zexhai demanded. "I am what humans become when you burn our homes and slaughter our families," the warrior replied. "I am what you created when you decided our species was primitive and weak." The human stepped closer, and Zexhai's remaining soldiers raised their weapons. But the creature made no aggressive moves, instead continuing to speak in that same conversational tone. "Your species has conquered 47 worlds. You have weapons that can crack planets and ships that cross galaxies. But you understand nothing about warfare. We are the greatest military force in the galaxy," Lieutenant Krau protested. The human smiled, and the expression was more frightening than any alien grimace. "You are bureaucrats with powerful toys. You have forgotten what war truly means. You bomb from orbit and expect submission. You land armies and expect quick victory. But you have never faced an enemy that refuses to submit." With deliberate slowness, the warrior removed something from its belt. A collection of tags and insignia from various consortium military units. Not just Vorthak forces, dozens of different species, representing battles across multiple star systems. Each of these came from soldiers who thought as you do, the human continued, who believed superior technology guaranteed victory, who forgot that war is not about weapons, it is about will. Zexhai stared at the collection, recognizing unit designations from campaigns across the galaxy. This single human had been hunting consortium forces for years, collecting trophies and learning from each encounter. "Impossible," he whispered. "One primitive cannot stand against the might of galactic civilization." "No," the human agreed. "One primitive cannot. But I am no longer primitive. I am what primitives become when civilization tries to exterminate them." I am evolution accelerated by necessity. The warrior gestured toward the burning jungle around them, where smoke still rose from the fires the Vortex forces had set. You came here to burn away our hiding places and force us into the open. But you misunderstood the relationship between predator and prey. This jungle is not our hiding place. It is our hunting ground. You are not forcing us out. You are walking into our trap. As if summoned by his words, movement stirred in the trees around the clearing. Not one figure now, but dozens. Humans emerged from concealment with the same fluid grace as their leader, each bearing the scars and equipment of veteran warriors. Zexai's blood turned to ice as he realized the full scope of his error. They hadn't been hunting one rogue human. They had walked into the domain of an entire community of warriors, each one forged by years of fighting a galactic empire. The clearing filled with ghosts made flesh. 37 humans emerged from the jungle, each moving with the same predatory grace as their leader. Some bore the scars of plasma burns, others showed signs of chemical weapons exposure, and all carried the unmistakable marks of prolonged warfare against technologically superior enemies. "Meet the rest of my unit," the lead warrior said, his voice carrying dark amusement. "Or what's left of it. We used to be a full company, 200 soldiers. The consortium reduced us to this through orbital bombardment, chemical warfare, and systematic extermination campaigns." Zexai's tactical mind automatically assessed the threat. 37 primitives against 8 elite Vortex soldiers should have been manageable, even in unfavorable terrain. But as he studied these humans more carefully, his confidence evaporated. These weren't ordinary survivors. They were something else entirely. Each human bore equipment that told a story. Consortium weapons modified in ways that defied engineering logic, but clearly worked. Armor pieces from a dozen different species welded together into functional protection. Technology scavenged, adapted, and improved by minds that understood warfare at its most fundamental level. "You see," the leader continued, "your empire made a critical error. You assumed that destroying our military would end our resistance. You bombed our bases, shattered our command structure, and scattered us across hostile worlds. But you forgot that humans don't need vast fleets or orbital platforms to wage war. We are the weapon." Lieutenant Crowell raised his plasma rifle, but before he could fire, the humans simply vanished. Not into the jungle. They were still there, visible, but somehow untouchable. They moved between trees, around rocks, through shadows with such fluid precision that targeting became impossible. "Ow!" Zexai whispered, watching warriors flow like water through space that should have been occupied by solid matter. Years of practice came the answer from directly behind him. The leader had somehow crossed 20 meters of open ground without making a sound or triggering any of their sensors. When your choice is adapt or die, adaptation becomes very focused. The human was close enough to touch now, but made no aggressive moves. Instead, he gestured toward Zexai's remaining soldiers, who were trying frantically to track targets that refused to remain in one place. "Your warriors are well-trained," the human observed. "I can see the discipline in their movements, the tactical thinking in their positioning. Under normal circumstances, they would be formidable opponents. But these are not normal circumstances. What do you want?" Zexai demanded, his weapon trained uselessly on an enemy who could disappear between one heartbeat and the next. "The same thing you wanted when you came here," the human replied. "To send a message. But mine will be different than yours." Without warning, the jungle exploded into motion. The humans attacked with coordinated precision that made consortium military doctrine look clumsy by comparison. They didn't rush forward like berserkers or advance in formation like conventional soldiers. Instead, they flowed like a deadly tide, each warrior's movements complementing the others in a dance of destruction that had been perfected through countless battles. Zexai watched in horror as his soldiers, veterans of galactic campaigns, masters of advanced weaponry, were systematically dismantled by opponents who should have been primitively equipped. But these humans had learned to use the Vortex's own advantages against them. Their plasma weapons were redirected by mirrors improvised from polished metal. Their advanced armor was penetrated by weapons that combined alien technology in ways the original designers never intended. Their tactical communications were jammed by devices that shouldn't have worked, but somehow did. Impossible. Krau gasped as his rifle was torn from his hands by a human who moved faster than Vorthack reflexes could track. Our equipment is centuries ahead of anything this species possesses. Your equipment is standardized, the human leader replied, watching his warriors methodically neutralize the Vorthack soldiers. Designed by committee, built by the lowest bidder, deployed by bureaucrats who have never seen real combat. Our equipment is personal, built by warriors for warriors, tested in battles your empire pretends don't exist. One by one, Zexai's soldiers fell. Not killed, captured, disarmed, and restrained with techniques that spoke of intimate knowledge of Vorthack anatomy and psychology. These humans knew exactly how to incapacitate his warriors without permanent damage. Why aren't you killing us? Zexai asked as the last of his soldiers was taken down. Because death is temporary, the human replied. But the story you'll tell when you return to your empire, that will last forever. The leader gestured, and several of his warriors began setting up equipment that Zexai recognized as consortium communication gear. But it had been modified extensively, combined with technology from other species, and enhanced in ways that suggested deep understanding of galactic communication protocols. You're going to contact your fleet, the human explained. You're going to tell them exactly what happened here. You're going to describe how a single company of human soldiers eliminated 500 of the galaxy's elite warriors using nothing but skill, determination, and intimate knowledge of your weaknesses. They won't believe it, Zexai protested. They will when they see the evidence. The human indicated recording devices that have been documenting everything. Your empire thinks it knows what humans are capable of. This will correct that misunderstanding. As his warriors finished setting up the communication array, the human leader continued his explanation. Your species conquered 47 worlds by overwhelming primitive defenses with superior technology. But you've never faced an enemy that learns from defeat, that adapts, and improves with each encounter. The communications system crackled to life, connecting to the Vorthack fleet in orbit. Zexai could hear the surprised voices of his superiors as they received his transmission. You will tell them this, the humans said quietly. Humanity is no longer primitive. We are what happens when an adaptable species is pushed to the edge of extinction by a technologically superior enemy. We are evolution accelerated by warfare. Through the communication link, Zexai could hear the fleet commander demanding explanations, threatening orbital bombardment, promising reinforcements. But the human leader smiled at each threat. Tell them also this, he continued. They are welcome to send more soldiers. We have learned much from your warriors, but there's always more to learn. Each attack teaches us new tactics, provides new equipment, shows us new weaknesses. The human gestured toward his warriors, who were already examining captured Vorthack gear with the intense focus of scientists studying new species. Your empire thinks this world is conquered because you control the cities and orbital space. But conquest requires more than superior firepower. It requires breaking the will to resist. And human will, commander, does not break. It adapts. As if to demonstrate his point, the humans began demonstrating modifications they had made to captured consortium equipment. Weapons that fired faster, armor that protected better, communications that reached farther. All improvements made by minds that understood warfare, not as an engineering problem, but as an art form. One more thing, the human said as Zexai prepared to relay the message to his fleet. Tell your empire that this was just one unit of human soldiers. Tell them to imagine what an entire planet of such warriors might accomplish when properly motivated. The implications hit Zexai like a physical blow. If these 37 humans could devastate an elite consortium force, what could millions accomplish? What happened when an entire species learned to fight the way these warriors fought? The transmission to the Vorthack fleet carried across space with the weight of galactic significance. Commander Zexai's words, spoken under the watchful eyes of human warriors, would reshape the consortium's understanding of their newest enemy. Fleet Command, Zexai said into the communicator, his voice steady despite the circumstances. This is Commander Zexai reporting complete mission failure. My force of 500 elite warriors has been neutralized by a single company of human soldiers. The silence that followed stretched for long seconds before Admiral Korth's voice crackled through the speakers. "Repeat your last transmission, Commander. Our sensors show massive interference from your location." "No interference, Admiral," Zexai replied, watching the human leader who stood beside him. "The humans have technology we didn't anticipate. They've been studying us for years, learning our tactics, adapting our equipment. This was not a lucky encounter. It was a carefully planned demonstration." Through the communicator came the sounds of frantic activity as the fleet command tried to process this impossible information. 500 Vorthack soldiers represented a significant military investment, each warrior worth a dozen conventional troops from lesser species. "Requesting immediate orbital bombardment of your position." Admiral Korth's voice carried barely controlled fury. "We will sterilize that jungle and everything in it." The human leader stepped forward, his voice carrying clearly through the comm system. "Admiral Korth, this is Colonel Marcus Chun, formerly of the 47th Human Expeditionary Force. I would not recommend that course of action." Shocked silence answered him. No primitive had ever addressed a consortium admiral directly, let alone with such casual confidence. "You are speaking to Admiral Korth of the 3rd Battle Fleet," came the eventually reply, voice thick with outrage. "You will surrender immediately or face complete annihilation." "I'm afraid you misunderstand the situation, Admiral," Chun replied calmly. "You are not in a position to make demands. Observe." At his gesture, other humans activated equipment that had been hidden throughout the jungle. The sky above the clearing shimmered as powerful shield generators came online, technology that should have been beyond human capabilities, but clearly wasn't. "Your orbital bombardment will be ineffective against shields powered by the fusion reactors we salvaged from your previous expeditions to this world," Chun explained. "We have had 3 years to prepare for your return." On the fleet's tactical displays, new signatures began appearing. Not one shielded position, but dozens scattered across the continent. Each one represented a defensive installation that could withstand orbital assault. "Impossible," Admiral Korth whispered. "Our intelligence indicated no industrial capacity. Your intelligence was carefully provided," Chun interrupted. "We wanted you to underestimate us. We needed you to send ground forces instead of simply glassing the planet from orbit. Thank you for providing us with 500 test subjects and their equipment." The humans began revealing more modifications they had made to consortium technology. Weapons that could penetrate Vorthack armor, sensors that could track cloaked ships, and communication arrays that could reach across galactic distances. Each innovation represented years of careful study and battlefield testing. "You see, Admiral," Chun continued, "your empire makes a fundamental error about warfare. You believe that technology determines the outcome of battles. But technology is just a tool. Victory goes to whoever uses their tools more intelligently." Through the comm link, they could hear Admiral Korth consulting with his staff, trying to understand how primitives had acquired such advanced capabilities. But the answer was simpler than the consortium wanted to admit. "Every time you attack us, you teach us," Chun explained. "Every weapon you fire shows us new principles of physics. Every piece of equipment you lose becomes a learning opportunity. Your empire has been inadvertently educating us for years." The human gestured toward his warriors, who were demonstrating captured Vorthack weapons that had been modified beyond recognition. "We don't have the industrial base to match your production, but we don't need it. We have something you've forgotten, the ability to adapt individual solutions to specific problems." Admiral Korth's voice carried new uncertainty when he spoke again. "What do you want?" "The same thing any military force wants," Chun replied. "Victory. But our definition might be different from yours. We don't need to conquer your empire. We just need to make conquest of our world too expensive to contemplate." Through the communication link, Chun began broadcasting data that made the Admiral's worst fears reality. Detailed intelligence about consortium military capabilities, star charts showing vulnerability points in their supply lines, and tactical analyses that revealed weaknesses in their strategic doctrine. "How did you acquire this information?" Admiral Korth demanded. "Your soldiers talk when they think they're dying," Chun said simply. "Your communication systems are less secure than you believe. And your empire spans so many worlds that security becomes diluted. We have been learning about you for much longer than you have been learning about us." The humans revealed their true strategic position. Hidden bases throughout the star system, armed with weapons salvaged and improved from consortium sources. Underground facilities that could survive orbital bombardment. And, most terrifying of all, evidence that similar human-resistant cells were operating on dozens of worlds throughout consortium space. You thought you were facing a primitive planet, Chen explained. In reality, you have been facing the early stages of a galactic insurgency. Humans scattered across your empire have been sharing information, coordinating resistance, and preparing for the day when we could strike back effectively. The implications were staggering. If humans on multiple worlds were as capable as these warriors, the consortium faced a military nightmare, an enemy that could strike anywhere, anytime, using their own technology against them. What are your terms? Admiral Korth asked finally. Simple, Chen replied. Complete withdrawal from human space. Immediate cessation of attacks on human worlds. And formal recognition that humanity will defend itself against any future aggression with whatever means necessary. The human paused, studying the captured consortium equipment around him. You may also tell the High Command that humanity is now officially applying for membership in the Galactic Military Consortium. We believe our recent combat performance qualifies us for consideration. The audacity of the request stunned everyone listening. After devastating an elite military force, these humans were calmly requesting to join the organization they had just defeated. Furthermore, Chen continued, we are prepared to offer our services as military advisors to help the consortium develop more effective ground combat doctrines. It appears your current tactics need significant improvement. Through the comm link came the sound of Admiral Korth consulting frantically with superior officers. The political implications of this encounter would reshape galactic balance of power. Humanity has learned much from you, Chen concluded. Your technology, your tactics, your weaknesses, all have been studied and understood. But, more importantly, we have learned that the greatest weapon in any arsenal is the will to never surrender. He gestured toward his warriors, each one a living example of evolution accelerated by necessity. You may inform the High Command that humanity is no longer primitive. We're no longer weak. We are what happens when an adaptable species is pushed to its limits by superior force. The human smiled, and in that expression lay the promise of changed galaxy. We are what humans become when you burn our homes and threaten our families. We are your newest and most dangerous allies or enemies. The choice is yours. As the communication ended, Zexai realized he had witnessed something unprecedented in galactic history. Not just a military defeat, but the birth of a new power that would reshape the balance of civilization. Humanity had evolved beyond the consortium's ability to control or predict. The age of easy conquest was over. The age of humanity had begun.